If you're shopping while working, eating, or even listening to this podcast, then you know and love the thrill of a deal. But are you getting the deal and cash back? Rakuten shoppers do. They get the brands they love, savings, and cash back. And you can get it too. Start getting cash back at your favorite stores like Levi's, Plow and Hearth, Adidas, Sephora, and Neiman Marcus. Stack sales on top of cash back and feel what it's like to know you're maximizing the savings. And it's easy to use. And you get your cash back sent to you through PayPal or check. The idea is simple. Stores pay Rakuten for sending them shoppers, and Rakuten shares the money with you as cash back. Download the free Rakuten app or go to Rakuten.com to start saving today. It's the most rewarding way to shop. That's Rakuten. Rakuten.com.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
Hi, everyone. I'm Selene Castrovilla.
I'm Pascale.
And this is Life in Jest, a show where we subscribe to Chaucer's sage words in the Canterbury Tales. Many a true word hath been spoke in jest. And today we are thrilled to have Lilli McGregor, Executive Director, Communications and Operations of Election Truth Alliance, as our guest. You may recall I spoke about Election Truth Alliance, I think about 3 episodes ago, and it's so exciting to have the person here that can really tell us everything about it.
It really is.
Welcome, Lilli, and please tell us about yourself and Election Truth Alliance.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Yes, my name is Lilli McGregor. My background is political science, history, and in my real person life, I work as a civil servant up in Canada.
Wow.
Yes, and my role in Election Truth Alliance, I'm one of the co-founders, as well as the executive director, as you said, of communications and operations. And I usually like to define what that means, because those are 2 words that can mean a whole lot of things. Communications really just means how we talk about what we do to people and do to other people. And then operations really just means the crunchy stuff of, how many times do we have to validate the data before it goes out the door? Oh, no, I can't share a file with you effectively. How do we do it? The really basic steps of how we do the work. And do you want me to talk a little bit about the ETA and what the group is?
Absolutely. Yeah. Tell us how it got started and everything about it. Absolutely.
For sure. Well, the Election Truth Alliance is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to election integrity. And it's a group that was started in the wake of the 2024 U.S. presidential election after there were no hand recounts of major races. And as the data came in for those elections, a number of us started to identify some concerns about anomalies in the data, some security breaches that had occurred prior to the election between 2020 and 2024. And I can get into it with prompting questions, but basically there were 3 of us that came together and basically had the realization that, hey, this is bigger than any one person. We need to work together, and probably the best and safest way for us to do that is by coming together and forming an organization. And so we started sprinting, and we haven't stopped since. So
I've consumed all your videos, amazing stuff. Wow, I am all in with you guys. Because I'm one of those people, when you first hear the questioning this, whatever, you go to the default, like, oh, come on, but you guys are showing us everything. I don't understand, and we'll get into this after, but I don't understand how anyone could not believe what you're saying, because you're not saying there definitely was something. You're just showing evidence that things should be checked. Why wouldn't anybody want that, right? So, I mean, I was upset. Of course, I didn't understand how everything came about, but you're saying you actually saw anomalies before you even looked at statistics? Like right away in the wake of it, you knew?
I would say no. There's other people in our organization who, whether it's pattern recognition or whatever it may be, felt concern very fast. I was not among those people.
Okay.
The things that stood out to me fastest were probably how all 7 swing states was one of the things that was like, that's quite unusual in American elections. And I mentioned that I'm Canadian, but I'm a politics hound, and I watch elections. And so, I watch the results come in live, like I have every U.S. election since 2012.
Oh wow!
And so it was already quite different from those previous experiences in some ways. But I think all 7 swing states, with the margin as close as it was really surprising. I would have been less surprised or concerned if it had been like, oh, it's 3 and 4, it was close, but that would have seemed like it would be more reflective of the environment to me. And then I think the other thing that did stand out to people quite quickly, not right away, because, it takes a little while to count election results. People sometimes, I think, expect you to have all of the final numbers, on November 6th. But, a lot of those states are still counting their mail-in ballots. They're still counting absentee. It takes a while to report things. One of the earliest pieces that did sort of flag people was the down ballot difference between the votes cast at the presidential race and then at the down ballots. So that could be for Senate, for governor. And I want to be clear, I'm a political scientist, and anyone who says to me, like, can you imagine someone putting, a Democrat at the top of the ticket and Republican down ballot or in the reverse? Like, I can't imagine. I'm like, yes, I can, actually. I can imagine that really well, because we know these people definitely exist. They absolutely do.
Yes, but not in the numbers, right?
It's the numbers and the consistency, which it's a hard thing to communicate to people. And we've had to play around with how we represent some of that data and charts, because it really is the consistency across the board that is so unusual. Because generally speaking, when you look at that down ballot difference, and just to articulate that out to the listeners, that might be areas where maybe in one place more people voted for the Democratic Senate candidate than they did for the presidential candidate. That can happen for all kinds of legitimate reasons. Maybe that person is super popular, right? Or maybe there was like a local scandal that really affected a certain group within that area, and that reflects in the voting patterns. But generally, you'd see a bit more variation across different places within a county. You'd see numbers up and down. You'd see like human randomness. Yeah. Something I often say is like, human beings are pretty random creatures. We can't coordinate on a big enough scale, even if we try, to kind of recreate those results. And so when you start seeing almost non-human patterns where it seems there is like a very eerie level of consistency, that's really when some of those early flags were raised. And that was some of the first data that I went and looked at. I'm not a data analyst, but I am a person who in my day-to-day life, I work with data analysts, I work with data, and I work with how do I present this data in a way that is consumable, but still true? Because I think that there's a risk always that if you try to make something too consumable, you impact the truthfulness of it because you simplify it too much. We have the big problem and challenge of trying to simplify things to the point where they can be consumed, but where they remain accurate. Because if you don't simplify enough, no one's going to listen. If you do it too much, then you compromise the integrity of what you're saying.
Yeah, it's so true. It's such a line to walk on. I am guilty of not being a math person at all. As a matter of fact, with the episode when we spoke about this ourselves, I said I had to apologize to math because I've been so mean to math, She has. But I was like, now math has shown us why we need math, and I will never be mean to math again because I'm a writer, So, but we can love math too. I've come to realize that it's okay, and certainly this is just the most amazing education for me to learn about how important statistics are in showing it's showing things that just are impossible to have happened, and yet they supposedly happened. But I do understand, because some of the videos that I've seen, I get very confused in those charts. You know, I get like, you know, it's hard to follow. But I'm the kind of person that if I get the general understanding of it, I know I'm never going to understand all that math. It's just not going to happen. You know, I could go to school for a whole degree, which wouldn't happen because they'd throw me out of the classes. I'd fail. But I just don't have a head for that. But some people want to, like, I have to understand. I'm like, well, you know, I don't know how much you're going to really understand here. That's like saying, you know, are you going to go, you know, install your own heater? Are you really going to understand all that stuff? But you know your heater works, right? You know, so.
You know, it's so challenging in terms of, you know, charts are one thing where we know it's so powerful to be able to visually communicate something, but it's a bit of a trial and error process, really, of like what lands and what hits with people. And are they taking away the thing that you want them to take away, not in terms of skewing a narrative, but in terms of like people might see something and be like, that looks suspicious. It's like, oh no, that's normal. Like that, that's not the part that we're concerned about, actually. And so it's definitely a trial and error process. And I've found that there are groups of people for every single one of the kinds of charts that we do who will die on the hill of that is the only good chart. All the other ones are bad. Like, you know, no one could possibly get these other charts. And then they'll all bicker for hours about which one is best. So it's a little bit of trial and error, refinement, and you know, we're trying to get better at summarizing the key findings of our longer form reports, because we know we have to have. So for those who don't know, we produce long form reports that really go into like the nitty gritty details of the counties and states that we're looking at, because we know that if we don't put that out, there will be the experts in math, in statistics, in elections who will be like, you just gave me a 2-page summary and you didn't show your math. Like, no way. And so we know we need to have that long form, understandably, right? Like people need to go and check us. Like, and then we encourage it actually, like, please go spot check us. See if you can replicate the findings that we have here. It's all data that comes from state and county websites. It's not like it's a secret. And, you know, we try to be pretty open about how we are, like what we're doing. So to see what people can do. And I'm happy to say that we have started to get a lot of people just being like, replicated your findings, like looks good. You know, which is awesome. And we're even starting to get people being like, hey, I did New Jersey. Hey, like I did a first pass looking at like my county in Florida or whatever it may be. So that's exciting to see that some people who do have those skills are starting to, you know, take those tools up and use them to look at their own areas.
Absolutely.
But I
that's very powerful.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's empowering.
Yeah.
I think it's empowering.
I think so. And I will say, I've been posting about you guys for a while steadily on Facebook, and people are starting to be way more positive. I'm like, thank you. Finally. It's just like repetition. And then I got flagged by Facebook for post. I boosted, you know, all it was the podcast episode about this, and all of a sudden I'm shut down completely. I'm like, there's a conspiracy. But I've had to do so much. I had to get a verification code in the mail. I had to answer unanswerable questions about my life. I had to get something. I had to get something notarized. And now I'm going to have to put publicly, like, it's not a big deal, but take responsibility. Like, I am the one behind these ads. Like, okay. But luckily they're not going to put my actual address, because like that I would draw the line. I don't really want, you know, who needs that? Mm-hmm. But it's been a lot, but I'm determined because, you know, only so many people see your posts. I want to boost them. I want more people to see. So I'm determined. I've been doing this for like a month trying to get it together.
You know, you're describing something that is we've encountered as well, which is the different platforms have different censorship expectations when it comes to words like, you know, that you wouldn't expect necessarily, like votes and election. And we had our TikTok shut down. Really? Like completely banned. And it was actually because they've got a couple of other, initially it was because of things, they have a censorship around words like bomb. And so we played a clip of a news report from Pennsylvania talking about bomb threats, and that they banned our account. We weren't able to get back on appeal. And it's like, this is the news. Like it's on, you know, it's on the news, but we appreciate that these different platforms have different expectations and different things that we have to do. So we have relaunched our TikTok. And
good.
what we're doing is we're using it as a space to point to other areas, just because it becomes, you have to kind of learn a different language to be able to talk about these things there. So we're using it as like, hey, Nathan's on YouTube and he's just, posted some stuff about Kentucky or whatever it may be. And then you keep it pretty high level, because otherwise you really do risk like getting something notarized. That's bonkers.
I know. And they said they're going to show this information for 7 years, make it available to people. I'm like, all right, but whatever. Really? I do live in a very Republican town. They already know that I'm the one Democrat that comes. But anyway, this goes beyond Democrat and Republican.
It does.
This is democracy,
yeah.
And people should care. And if people believe that it wasn't tampered with, and that's absolute right, and maybe it wasn't, then let's prove that.
All right.
What is the big deal?
I really do feel that very strongly because, and maybe it's a little bit cultural. I live in Canada and like, boy, do we recount votes when we're not certain.
I think you should. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I love Canada. I've been there several times. Lovely. I've been to several areas. I love it there.
It's a wonderful place. I love my country.
Yeah,
and I love how we do elections. I love that we hand count our paper ballots. I love that amazing. We're not afraid to recount things because, ultimately, if you won, a recount's going to show that you won, right? Like recounting the ballots will show that you won. Use it as a victory lap. Like, why not? Yeah. Be like, look at how well I did. I'm amazing. Remember how I won here? Like,
exactly.
There's nothing to fear. If you won, then there's nothing to be scared of. And I want to highlight something that you said before, Selene, which is, the fact that we're not saying so-and-so did this and they therefore, this happened. We don't know what happened, but what we see is that there are things in the data that we can't explain that that appear to be patterns consistent with vote manipulation, that, other countries have developed methods of analyzing elections.
Yes.
And we're ticking some of those concerning boxes. And so why not check? What is there to lose? What are you afraid of to check and
exactly.
see?
Well, we're going to get into a little bit more about what's happening specifically in areas, but I would like you to, there's one other thing that's been spoken about a lot in the videos, and that's the Russian tail. Can you explain that?
I can, and I'm going to try and do it verbally because it's something visual.
I'll say the Election Truth Alliance has a YouTube channel, so you can actually watch videos that will show you. You can see all the charts and things.
True. You can go into our YouTube and just search Russian tail, and you will get a video of my co-founder Nathan explaining the Russian tail to you. Sure. The Russian tail is a pattern that shows up in places like Russia, Russian elections going back to 2000, and areas where we suspect Russian interference in elections, like in the country of Georgia's recent election. And in Russia, what we know they do, because we have videos of this, we have eyewitness testimony, you can see them on YouTube actually, is they stuff the ballots physically. It is physical ballot boxes in Russia. That's not machines like you have in the United States. And someone will come in and they will take a bunch of ballots for Vladimir Putin or whomever it may be, and they stuff the ballot boxes in those places. And so they come in and they physically will stuff those boxes. And so what happens there is that because they've added a bunch of votes, right, it looks like a lot of people have turned out to vote. Like sometimes an unusually high number of people, like 90, 95, 100% of people who can vote have voted. And if you've ever tried to get people to vote, you'll know that it's actually very hard, and it's very unlikely that you're going to get 100% of people who can vote turning out to vote in an area. And these Russian statisticians, using some methods that had previously been identified by some American folks as well, began to kind of chart what their own elections looked like, because there were eyewitness testimony of people stuffing ballot boxes. There were videos of this, and they wanted to try to get a sense of, well, can I quantify it? Like how big is the rig here? How big are they doing this? What does this look like? And how has that changed over time? And so they developed a method of charting the voter turnout relative to how well each candidate does. And so in the areas where people were stuffing those ballot boxes physically, it creates a spike. because it looks like everyone turned out to vote there, right? And they really love Putin a lot. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, wow.
Wow, they love Putin. And so you will see that in areas of unusually high turnout, disproportionate benefit for one candidate. And when you map it on a chart, it creates a little tail. The tail gets so big sometimes, especially as Russian elections went on, that the tail gets bigger than the not tail. Like, it gets bigger than the beast.
Right.
So when you start seeing this trend appear in Russian elections in 2000, it's quite modest. It's a little bit of a bump to Putin, not a huge one. By the time we see there was a Russian referendum in 2020 that was intended to be about, should we amend the constitution so that Vladimir Putin can run for more terms, basically. And the tail is huge. It is like they really wanted to get that through in 2020. And so that trend of areas of high turnout, often unusually high turnout, disproportionately benefiting one candidate to the point where it kind of breaks the expected trend. That's a Russian tail. And it's a journalistic term to describe this statistical phenomenon. And the reason it's relevant in American elections is because we are finding it and identifying it in key swing states. We have identified that Russian tail. It doesn't mean that it's done by Russia. It just means that it's a trend that you see. Just a name, because it happens there so much.
Right.
And it's reflective of their patterns of vote manipulation, right? Like, you can manipulate the vote in different ways. You can flip votes. You can misreport them. You can add votes. You can delete votes. But it generally reflects this trend of how Russia tends to influence their elections and manipulate their elections. And we're seeing that in places like Philadelphia. We're seeing it in places like North Carolina, which we're very close to finalizing and releasing our report on.
Wow.
And so when you start to look and see, like, I think my colleague Nathan had a really good way of saying it, where, if we saw this trend in Venezuela, we would call it, election manipulation. But because we see it in Philadelphia, we're calling it politics. Like, why is this so different?
Yeah, well, I think it was very good that you clarified that Russia didn't do it. We're not saying Russia did it. It's just what it's called, because that is something people might immediately think. So that's good. But also, I'm not understanding why people, like, why isn't Kamala Harris saying anything about any of this? Is there, what do you think is going on?
I think that, so my perspective is that this is multifaceted, but a really big thing is that the 2020 Stop the Steal movement really poisoned the well in a lot of ways for talking about election integrity. Because you did have people, there is a big push that I noticed of, we're not like them. We're not like them. We're going to accept the results when we see them. We're not like them. We're not going to attack the integrity of our elections. And there's a certain amount of, we want to have evidence. We want to, like, that. Absolutely. That is a good thing. However, my concern is that, are you going to give someone else the power over you to say that, like, I don't want to have someone call me a name, so therefore I'm not going to look into really serious security concerns with not just this election, but all future elections?
Exactly.
That's funny, because we had this conversation recently.
Yeah.
Do tell.
Right. Yeah, because it seems almost that Trump was over protesting, so it became completely egregious, like, for us to ever question anything. It was sort of preparation for something like this happening, where he just figured, whoever's planning for him, they're not going to open their mouths because they're the ones that are the good ones. You know what it is? Okay. What is that saying? When they go low, we go high. I don't think that works, because we have to, I'm not saying we go low with our tactics, but we have to check what's going on low. When you're high, you're not really looking at what's happening low. And I think we have to look. And I understand you want to be above it all, but what are you really gaining by that? We're just saying, check it. I'm not saying Kamala Harris should say Jacques Hughes, and I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, maybe say, hey, would it hurt to check? How about endorsing it? Because that would give more validity. Like, because my own son, who is so reasonable, said, "You sound like Trump in the last election." I'm like, never say that again. I'm like, but there are real statistics here. I took the time to watch every video you guys had. I read every article. I didn't just jump into this. A friend was telling me, but when she said it's a bunch of statisticians, I'm like, well, those people aren't into conspiracy theories. Those are the people that are going to always check everything, So I just don't understand where the Democrats are coming from, because our country is in grave peril right now. Would it hurt to check? And what about the midterms? What's going to happen if we don't check?
Absolutely. And I think that there's another aspect as well that we don't talk about as much, because the first one is, as we talked about just now, there's that, we even have a phrase of, every accusation is a confession. There are common ways of talking about this, but there seems to be a protection field around the topic of elections where that fear of being called conspiratorial, that fear of being called, like, it's almost used as a hand wave to dismiss things, where, sometimes it's like, hang on, you can't just say conspiracy and wave it away and then, fail to kind of look at things that are actually of grave importance. And as you say, especially for the future, for midterms, as well, there is a real fear in the Democratic Party, as there are studies that show that the more confidence people have in their elections, the more they're going to be willing to go out and vote. And so I think that they have a fear and a concern that by saying we should double check, let's go audit the ballots, that we're in some way saying don't bother voting in the future, which is the absolute antithesis of what we're saying. Absolutely,
that doesn't make any sense.
Go vote in every election, but also
but if it's being messed with, what good is that? We have to make sure the votes actually count. And that's the only thing,
exactly.
Oh my gosh.
It is this
crazy.
This thought of, if you say we need to double check, therefore it's like you're admitting that something's wrong. And like, well, we don't know that. Go check and see. Like, maybe there's nothing wrong at all. And can't we all go in feeling super confident about next time? But I do think that is a concern. And it may be a situation where that messaging has become so ingrained. And I'll say as well, I've become really cognizant of it when I listen to people talk about 2020. Sometimes they'll say things about what was found or not found, and I'll be like, oh, that's not quite right. Like, oh, that's not quite right. Even like pundits and journalists that I really have a lot of, often I trust quite a lot, or I admire and think they're very diligent. They'll summarize things a little bit inaccurately, where they'll be saying, well, they found in 2020 that our elections are the securest in the world. And I'm like, no, they didn't. That's not what they found at all. Like, they found that there was no evidence of, election manipulation benefiting Biden. Like that, like, let's be really clear about what was found and not found.
Exactly.
As opposed to saying, like, they found everything was secure and there's no issues forever. It's like, that's just, number one, that is just not true.
How could it just be, even if it was at that moment the most secure, there's no proof. You can't ever say it always will be the most secure. You have to keep looking at things.
Exactly. It's not like it's a goal that you hit and then you're done, right? Like, it's an ongoing, continual process. And where those statistics can come in handy is, like, where are their concerns? Where do we think that we should double check? What should we look at? And that's, where there can be a lot of benefit. And, we're not making these methods up out of nowhere. These are what I was really shocked by is that, like, there is actually quite a vibrant community of people who do election analysis and election forensics in Europe, South American countries, like the rest of the world does this. And we'll check and see, like, whether there are concerns in elections. They've got, methodologies and approaches for it. And it was shocking to me at first that, like, my God, why is this, like, this is just so unheard of in America? Why is this not something that is, like, there seems to be very little presence here of people who do that kind of work. And Dr. Walter Mebane, is one of the people here in the United States who is a global expert in election forensics. And when we spoke with him back in April, he described finding that as one of the reasons that got him into this field in the first place, when he was looking, 20 years ago and going, my God, where are all the Americans here? Where are we in this conversation? And I've figured out a little bit, I think, why it's so difficult to do the same kind of analysis for the United States. And you folks may have noticed that every election in the United States they're run by the states and the counties, and they're like 50 elections in a trench coat.
Right.
Sometimes they're like 3,000 elections in a trench coat because of all the different counties. And
Right.
I think that your listeners would be really shocked at how much work from how many people with extraordinary skill sets it is taking us to get the data and get it analysis ready in order to see it and clean it. It's not like we just, in my country, you can get that the data for the whole country from Elections Canada and you're done. Like, you got it.
Right.
It's a months-long process, very labor-intensive for the United States because of how those elections are run and because there is no requirement or agency that collects all of that information to make an analysis ready. And so in practice, that could be months or years long effort for one person to do. But it does mean that this is a chance for us to take some of that expertise and refine that data down and start using these methods that are used in other places to examine U.S. data as well.
Wow. Yeah, I never thought about that, but the fact that everything is so separate down to the counties, that sounds like too many cooks.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and it's high risk too. Like, there's a really good...
So many pieces that could be messed with without anybody noticing, especially on the smaller levels, for sure.
And some people will say, like, well, our elections are secure because there are so many different processes, it would be very hard to compromise them. And it's like, sadly, no. And there's a really good expert testimony from a man called J. Alex Halderman, who is an expert in election security and machinery. And he clarifies in testimony to a bipartisan committee of the U.S. Senate Committee on Intelligence about this. He says, like, having this be so disparate just means that bad actors can target the places with the weakest security and go and hit there, right? Like, it's not as though it means that everything is a Rubik's Cube. It means that you go for the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
And also, frankly, there are only a handful of companies that make these machines.
Yes, I want to address that when we talk about Pennsylvania in the letter that you guys got back from Pennsylvania. So that's on my list. But before we get to that, I just want to once again really reiterate about the improbability of one candidate sweeping all of the swing states with such a high margin that automatic audits weren't triggered. I mean, God, how is that even possible?
It is very, very unusual, very unexpected. So when we were looking into this, I'll give you a little bit of the behind the scenes of how we were like looking into this and seeing it. We wanted to know, like, when was the last time that this happened, that one candidate swept the swing states? And for a little while, we were thinking that it was 1984 because Ronald Reagan in 1984 won 49 of 50 states. With
did it?
Yeah, with 58 or 59% of the vote for the country, like absolute landslide, and won so many states. So we were thinking that was the case. We got some pushback from someone who was like, "Hey, I was around for that election, and Minnesota, the one state that didn't flip, was considered a swing state at that time. Actually, Mondale held it. It's like, oh well, whoopsies, are bad." And so, but that, it's always hard looking back because historically the context that you have for each election about what are the swing states this election gets tricky to kind of to parse and pull back over time, and you have to be kind of cautious about it. But like the last time, other than that, you start having to look back before then, and you start looking and we need to do more like research and really confirm this, because as I say, it gets hard to kind of confirm what the swing states are. The last time may have been FDR, Roosevelt, in the 30s, when he won with 59% of the vote and swept like in a huge crushing victory. That could have been it. But I think that gives you some sense of like, even with 49 of 50 states, you may not have won all the swing states.
Crazy. I mean, and let's look at it here. Like, there were a substantial amount of people that said they were not going to vote for Donald Trump. Like, how did this happen? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
I think that you said something really important that I want to emphasize, Selene, and that is the outside of the automatic recount threshold. So many states, it varies from state to state, but if you win within a certain margin, there will be a recount. And it'll just happen. Like, okay, well, you won by 0.5%, and, we're just going to do an automatic recount there. It's not even just that it was all 7 of the swing states. All 7 swing states outside of automatic recount thresholds.
Yeah.
Some of them just outside of automatic recount thresholds. And that means that you have really had to hit a very precise window of, if you won those states, and we know that nationally, Donald Trump won with 49 and change % of the vote. I've run the numbers for the different swing states. It's pretty similar to what he won by in those various states, like between 48 to 51 or 52%. And in the process of doing that, for every single one of these, it wasn't close enough for an automatic recount. It was outside that threshold.
Yeah.
That is a level of, like, how convenient. That's really convenient.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wait, for all of them?
All of them.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Isn't that bonkers? Every single one of them.
It's just funny how that worked out like that, isn't it?
Wow, isn't that convenient? Wow.
Yeah.
And the House and the Senate? Wow.
Amazing. Yeah.
And the popular vote.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, so I want to talk about Pennsylvania, and I have first now, and I didn't pick up on this at the time, but I certainly have been thinking about it since you guys have been speaking about things, and I really can't believe how I just sort of accepted everything. Like, I feel like I should have said something sooner, but not like I could ever, not like I'm going to be suddenly heard on stage, like, hello, but I just feel like, wow, I just got so depressed, what I mean? So
I think a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump thanked Elon Musk publicly for working so hard for him in Pennsylvania. And then he mentioned how much knowledge Musk has about Pennsylvania's vote counting machines.
Vote counting computers.
Yes. And there's a video of Musk laughing profusely with someone about he would be so screwed if Trump didn't win, about how much jail time he would serve, and would he be able to see his kids. And then we have little X, who stuck a booger on the Resolute desk, and then he told Donald Trump, "You're not the president," perhaps repeating something he's overheard from his dad. So obviously none of these things are proof at all, but they're certainly worrisome and fodder for a call for an election audit. So what do you think about these things, and why do you think that more Americans are not alarmed by them?
So there's a strategy. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
We encourage it.
Excellent. Excellent. So there's a strategy that Steve Bannon has talked about a lot, on his War Room podcast, Flood the Zone with Shit. And the point of that is you throw everything at people. You make bam, 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 bam. You make it so that there's too much happening at all times. You physically can't respond to all of it. You physically can't track all of it. And especially it is a tactic that is intended both to overwhelm and demoralize, make you feel like you can't respond to it all. You lose track of what's important to respond to. It makes it very difficult. And I will say this is actually one of the strategies of fascism is to just put out a lot of things all the time. They don't have to be true. Just make it continuous. And the point is to overwhelm you. The point is to make it so that you can't pick what's important, and you spend time bickering about how to respond. You spend time bickering about what's important, and then 500 other things have happened in the meantime, and it all gets lost. And so that flood, I think, is a really big reason why, if 80 things are happening in a day, how can you physically keep track of all of them if you have a life? You have a job, you have family, and other things that you care a lot about that are going to all take attention. So I would say that's one thing. And what people don't talk about is it's super effective. Like, it's a very effective method. There's a reason that it's tried and true, right? It does overwhelm people. And I think we have to have compassion and grace for people. Like,
I understand. I'm just, all I want to do is raising the alarm bells. That's all.
But don't you feel exhausted by it? It's
Yes.
exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. And I mean also for both of you, like, I think there's a level of compassion. I know you were saying earlier, Selene, like, you know, I wish I had noticed earlier, like the zone has been flooded. The fact that you're recognizing now is huge. And I'll say as well that, like, you know, one thing that I think we learned in the first Donald Trump term is that when so much is happening every day, like, there's just too much news to cover. Like, it gets too difficult to track all of it. And it reminds me a little bit, this is a slight tangent, but if you've ever listened to Rachel Maddow's podcast, Ultra, it goes and talks about the ultra right wing, the rise of American fascists in the 30s and 40s. And some of these you know, news pieces were like front page news at the time. And you think to yourself, like, why didn't we study this in school? Why isn't this something we learned about? And it's like, well, if a world war is on, then that's a lot of news in one day. Every day is news about that. And when you look back historically, like, all we talk about is really going to be, like, where did the troops move? What happened then? You're not always going to be following all of those
There's more to
pieces.
it than that. America does not like to acknowledge any blemishes in its own history, okay? Because I write books for a lot of children's books I write, and I wanted to write a young adult book about eugenics. I mean, I couldn't even believe, did you know that the Germans got the idea for eugenics from learning from us? I mean, what? You know, like, I was shocked when I read that, but I can't get a book contract for this. You know, I didn't learn this in school. No, young people are not learning. There's no shame in things we did, but we have to know them so we don't repeat them. I mean, it's crazy.
And my country is not exempt. Germany got a lot of ideas about, controlling populations from Canadian residential schools dealing with First Nations people. Yeah. Apartheid South Africa as well. They were like, inspiration, let's use these tactics. Like,
isn't that all? Yeah.
The worst kind of inspiration. But I will say as well, I want to dig into what you mentioned about the vote counting computers, and I'll maybe share with you how that came to our attention. It was the day after we published our Clark County, Nevada report, our very first report as the ETA.
Oh, wow.
The ink, metaphorically, is barely dry on this webpage that we have just got live. And Nathan had traveled to DC to connect with Lulu from Smart Elections, which is another election integrity organization that we share information with and collaborate with at times. And they were doing a live stream together. And so we're all focused on the live stream. We've just got this report up. It's all there. And the very next day, we start getting all this, like, explosion of notifications. It is the pre-inauguration rally that Donald Trump is at. And that is where on stage, you know, Elon Musk knows those computers better than anybody. All those computers, those vote counting computers. And we won Pennsylvania like in a landslide. So thank you. Elon. And it was one of those, at the time, I remember just being like, my God, I know. My God, we had just put out the Nevada report, which was basically had a big section of us saying we're concerned about the tabulators, the vote counting tabulators, being potentially compromised. And so, you know, having that quote be out there, it was exasperating, but also very validating, because it was like, well, this is another piece of circumstantial evidence that says that we should maybe be concerned about the counting. But what I will add that it did too was that it broke through to people in a way that other things hadn't up until that point. Hearing those words from Donald Trump himself made people who had previous to that been very reluctant to even contemplate anything could be wrong with the integrity of the elections. A portion of those people snapped out and were like, hang on, like, what just happened? What did he just say? Why is he talking about vote counting computers? What does that mean? And if you look back, there's clips from before the election of a similar Donald Trump saying Elon Musk knows, you know, these vote counting, these computers so well. You know, you bring in a box and he's like, oh, I know what that one is. It's this, or whatever it may be. And it's like, why do you have vote counting computers that's not anything you would do for training. And obviously these are just offhanded remarks, but I do think that there is it adds to the body of context, right?
Absolutely.
It adds to the body of context about behavior. How are people acting? There's an expert on authoritarianism called Ruth Ben-Ghiat. And I remember watching a report where she was speaking and saying it's very interesting watching the Trump regime administration after coming into power and how fast they're moving, how quickly they're moving. And the phrase that she used was something to the effect of, they're acting the way that people act after a coup. Like they're acting the way that people act after a coup has been done. And then she paused and went, which is strange because that didn't happen here. They won an election. They came into power fairly. Yeah. And I'm sitting there watching my screen, wanting to pull my hair out a little bit because it's like, let's double check that. I want to make, can we check? I want to make sure.
Yeah. Well, that is true, though. That does remind me of a coup. Now that you say that, they have, the rapid destruction of everything. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. You're right. You're right. And
it's one of those moments so you're like, oh, you're so close. You're so close.
I don't get it. I don't get, but people are rightly so upset about him being on the Epstein thing. However, I will say, I think we knew that already. I don't think it was new news, and so what, there's more reason. Why don't we check to see if these ballots, this is something we can actually do. This is something, so, anyway, so let's talk about Professor, I'm still confused about his name, right?
Mebane. And if I may, I'll add one thing before then, which I think is just a good segue between these topics. The fact of the matter was with that Pennsylvania, we won Pennsylvania by a landslide, those vote counting computers. I'll be honest, we had not intended to have Pennsylvania be our next state after Nevada.
Interesting.
That was not our goal. It was number 6 of 7 on our list.
Wow.
And the reason was because it was so chaotic on election day. There was a lot of chaos. There were bomb threats across Pennsylvania. There were machine failures. There was a lot of chaos in the data. And we looked at it and went, God, that looks difficult. Let's start with something that looks a bit easier, just to ease ourselves in, get the capacity built. Right. We were looking at other states to do. And then, and then he gets on stage and says, vote counting computers in Pennsylvania. We all look at each other and we're like, I guess we're doing Pennsylvania next.
Wow, that's so funny.
Right? I wonder, do you think he was trying to just brag in the most way he could that he had done this? Or, what was going on in this man's head?
What's ever going on in his head?
That is a bigger question than any of our pay grades, I think.
Yeah, I guess we're going to need to dig up Freud for that one. I know.
We did end up having to go into Pennsylvania then. And we made a decision to do that. We could have not. But what I knew and believed was that if we did any other state, we were just going to get endless questions about but what about Pennsylvania? What about the vote counting computers in Pennsylvania? We were just, any other state was going to be diminished in attention because people were just going to be wanting to know about Pennsylvania. And so we had to dive in, and it took some time. I'll be honest. There was a reason that was lower down our list to parse through. We had to sort of, it was a different methodology that we had to sort of learn for Pennsylvania because they report their content by precinct versus Nevada reports their content by machine. So we had to kind of learn how to do that differently. But ultimately, I'm really glad we did. I think it was a good, I think that everyone would have been clamoring for Pennsylvania if we hadn't. And B, we learned a lot. We kind of initially went in being this is so chaosy, I can't even tell, maybe we're going to look at this and the answer is going to be, it looks fine, I don't know what he's talking about. But as we dug deeper, as we found certain precincts to focus on, our alarm bells went off like wild. We realized that there's 3 different metrics on which this is giving us concerns here. And so we did that analysis. We put out our Pennsylvania report. We called it was 3 counties in Pennsylvania because we felt that if we just said this is Pennsylvania, people will be like, excuse me, this is 3 counties in Pennsylvania. This is not actually all of Pennsylvania. We focused on Philadelphia, Allegheny, and Erie counties. And the reason for those three being the targets was because Philadelphia and Allegheny, Allegheny is where Pittsburgh is. Those have the largest amounts of votes of the counties in Pennsylvania, of which there's 67. And Erie has the fifth largest, but it's a bellwether county. And what a bellwether county is, that means that it is renowned for voting in alignment with the state. So it's sort of like where Pennsylvania goes, so too goes Erie County. And so what we noticed was that we noticed that Erie had some very dramatic trends in it, and we didn't know why at first, and looked into it. We were like, is this a bellwether county? And we looked, and it was. And so in our minds then, like, oh, if you had a bellwether county and you knew people were going to be looking at it to see and make sure that it matched, you would probably put resources there if you were trying to manipulate the vote to make sure that it lined up with whatever the statewide outcome was. So that's the rationale for those counties. We put our report out. And then, as you mentioned, I'll let you transition into Dr. Mebane, but we ended up going to him to be like, hey, are we crazy? Like, can you like, we want to talk to an expert who has been going over these pieces of information. And I'll maybe let you provide that intro to Dr. Mebane so that I make sure I answer the questions you want to answer.
That's really, I'm so impressed by, I want you to explain what he did, because he insisted on doing his own work, of course, but then he looked at a bunch more than just the three, right? Didn't he look, right? So first tell us, I don't have his credentials in front of me. Can you give us his credentials?
I can. Dr. Mebane is probably has more credentials that I'm not even going to touch on, but because he's a very credentialed man.
Yes.
But he is a professor of political science and statistics at the University of Michigan, and he is a world-renowned leading expert in election forensics. And that's the term for looking at election results and seeing what you find in there. Does anything look weird? Does anything look like it deserves additional? Are there any Russian tails? And he has his own particular method called e-forensics. He would say, he's like, I have a professional disagreement with other people in this field. I think my method is best, but of course I do. It's mine. Like, I made it. Fair enough. And so he has developed a method for looking at these election results. And it involves a lot of different inputs. It's very dense. He is an academic through and through. And we reached out to him because we knew that there were these U.S. experts that are, have been studying elections. And it was a red flag for us that we weren't hearing from them. Like, why are we seeing this trends in the data? And like, why are we the ones bringing it up? Like, there are other experts in these areas. Is there something that we've missed? Help us out here. What's the case? Yes, absolutely. He insisted on doing his own analysis, as any good academic would do. It's not just like trust ours, go and do it yourself.
Yes.
So we worked with him. We provided the data that we had for the three counties. And all of this is just data taken from the three websites for the counties and the state of Pennsylvania, and then cleaned up into a format that's easy to analyze. So that doesn't mean that you're changing anything. It just literally means you are taking usually like a spreadsheet or maybe like a PDF that someone's done. Like, that's hard to run your analysis on. And you're taking the content there and you're putting it into a spreadsheet so that it's all aligned and it's nice. And then you can run those numbers and hit yourself. And he ran the numbers first for those three counties. And while he was doing that, we were frantically pulling data from the rest of the state and making sure that we had what was needed in case he might want to look at the rest of the state as well. And sure enough, it was probably one of the most validating moments of all of our time working on this, was getting that first report back from him and seeing the trends that he was identifying, and that this was not, he was very skeptical when we talked to him at first. He was like, I've told a lot of people disappointing things that, like, no, your candidate just lost. And we were like, well, we're prepared to hear it. Like, we're not batting for any particular candidate. We're batting for democracy here. So like, do your worst, do that analysis. And when he came back and indicated that, yes, he was seeing very concerning trends in those three counties, He had a quantified amount of votes that he felt were suspect, and then asked to see the rest of the state, to take a look at the rest of the state. So we were able to provide that over. We had to work with him a little bit on like finessing and making sure that we had the accurate data. Again, all of the different counties do it differently, and some of them like to be special snowflakes that do it in a very special way. But we were able to work with him and get him that data, and then he ran his e-forensics approach for the whole state, and was able to get that back to us. And yeah, I think that we are a group of people that really values expertise, that really values, like, we love a double check. Honestly, give us a triple, a quadruple, a quintuple check, please. But probably
Absolutely.
like, and having that come through and say, yes, there are concerns here. It's even better to have an expert use their own method that they developed and find similar concerns. Like, we care about that much more than like, yes, your methods that you use are good. Like, whatever. What about yours, sir? Like, does it do the trick? And he's also run a preliminary analysis for North Carolina as well.
Oh, wow. Has that has not been released, right?
No, we've been sitting on it in order to kind of have it come out at about the same time. He gave us permission to put that out. He hasn't linked it on his website, but he did give us permission to share it. So before we launch the North Carolina analysis, we're going to be reaching out again and saying, just to confirm, are you still good?
Wow.
Do you want us to put it on the website? Wow. Do you want to post it yourself? What's your comfort level?
Very exciting. Yeah.
I have a question. Yeah. How many of you are there? Like, how many people are working with you?
There's over 50 of us now. So I would say that the numbers are always a little bit misleading because we're all volunteers and we're all working in our free time, often asynchronously across different time zones.
Oh gosh!
And I know time zones is one of our. We have a couple of our top enemies, and one of them is time zones, because the number of times that we'll be like at 5 and everyone's like, 5 where? Like, what are you talking about? We've got a group of people doing data. We have a group of people who help with our communications, things that can be everything from graphic design to videos to, writing letters to politicians to say, hey, we found these concerning results, or whatever it may be. And then we also have some people who are helping us with tech, and then folks that we're bringing in. We're building up our legal team as well. We were hopeful that it, filing a lawsuit to try to get an audit or a recount done is kind of a last resort. Like, ideally, what you want to have happen is that you bring your concerns to the responsible officials. They, assess them, determine whether or not they think anything's of concern, and ideally they just do it. They say, "Yep, this I've seen enough. Like, I want to have that be done." But we were recently. Got a second decline letter from the state of Pennsylvania, who initially said, you asked us the wrong way, ask us a more formal way. And we said, okay. And we asked them the formal way. And then they pointed to their previous decline. So that was lovely.
It's such it's so disappointing. I mean, is it because they're just being defensive because they don't want to admit that something might have happened or on their watch?
As someone who works in government, it's never fun to be told that you've done something wrong, like, or to be, it's not
wrong. It's just something was tampered with. It's not like they did it.
Exactly. And I think that's actually really important, because I think that there can be a perception, and we're realizing this more and more, there can be a perception that we're coming for the election officers, or, we're accusing them of wrongdoing. And sometimes the pushback we get is people saying, I've worked with election officials. They're some of the most, integrity-filled people I've ever met in my life.
Sure.
And I've worked elections as well myself in Canada, and I can attest that that is the case. And what I really want to communicate is the fact that, like, we do not want, like, there are so many ways that you can manipulate an election in the U.S. system that you would have no idea. As a election worker, as the officials, you are the ones doing this hard, important work. And what we don't want is for some bad actor to come between that hard work and dedication and the will of the American people. And I think that there's a fear of appearing to have done something wrong, even though having a recount doesn't say that there's anything wrong. It is just a safety precaution. But I do think as well, like, there's a lot of that kind of response that has built up from 2020. This sense of being under attack.
Well, sure, especially with Giuliani, what he did. I mean, my God.
Yes. There's really legitimate trauma, I think, in election officials. They lost a lot of people who are concerned and do not want to, like, they know that they're doing their very best, and there is a legitimate concern and fear about people reducing confidence in elections that they feel are being done in a good way. I do also think, though, that there's a political aspect here. There is a political aspect to it. There is the appearance, or maybe the appearance of, if I say yes to a recount or yes to an audit, that will be treated by others as a political decision rather than a governance decision.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, which I understand.
But when you look at what's at stake, though, democracy is more important than any of these other things.
Absolutely. And, we've had some conversations with, I won't say who, but with some officials in some states saying, like, we're really concerned, like, we're actually concerned, but we're worried about calling for a recount or an audit publicly and then having it be nothing, or having it like, and what we've kind of said is, like, hey, we can keep our mouths shut. Like, if you want to call that and have that be done, discreetly, and then, regroup after the fact, like, that's fine. We don't need to be the ones that are up on the hill, like, waving the flag and saying, like, we made it happen. Like, hey, we don't have to be in there. Like, you can if that is, we can work with you behind the scenes. We can, advocate for that to be done, and then see what happens afterwards. But I do think that there is a political concern that people have.
I just think that everything kind of went out the window because everything's gone to hell, and it's only getting worse. I mean, like, the coup thing is going on, and it's just getting worse and worse. They're wiping us away. Like, anybody that ever needs any kind of assistance has now been devastated, on every level. So any concerns about politics, it's a little late for that anyway. It's like, it could only, I mean, these people are all endangered anyway, just with the current climate, right? The only thing that could happen is if it was discovered something did happen, they might look like a hero for agreeing to it.
I totally agree. I think that when, I'm going to say when, not if, I think that when an election, like, official, a responsible election official does make a call and says, we're doing it, we're going to go pull out those boxes. We keep these for a reason. This is exactly why we do this. You don't keep those for 22 months for fun. You keep them so you can check them again afterwards if you need to.
Exactly.
And I think that, if they do that, and if they find something concerning, like, what a hero move that you end up looking like. And I'd also say the stakes are so high in terms of future elections. I get very anxious when I start hearing people talk about, well, we'll get them in the midterms. And it's like,
but we won't if this could happen again.
How do you know that that's even on the table?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's the hugest reason to press on for this,
Absolutely.
It's so true.
Absolutely. But it's so important to make sure that, as this assumption that it can't possibly happen here has not served America super well over the last few years. And
absolutely.
I think that that's really important when it comes to the integrity of future elections. And even if, like, we're starting to, to be thinking about how we frame out, like, the advocacy and election protection, and making sure that we count the votes for 2024 and all future elections. Like, there is no reason that like, why? I know people will talk about, like, well, it's resource intensive and it takes time to count the votes. Okay, allocate the resources.
It's an important thing to put resources toward. I mean, there's many things that we spend money on that are, I mean, I'm not saying there's validity for everything, but on the scale of things, I would think our democracy is one of the number one things, if not the number one thing, to put your resources toward.
Absolutely, and it affects all the other things too, right? Like, if your democracy is compromised, it's compromised all the way down. And whenever anyone says it takes a long time, I go, does it take 4 years? Like, I mean, come on.
It's ridiculous, And I had so many negative people when I initially started talking about this on Facebook, and somebody that's widely respected in my community, like a leader, he was like, "No, it's a waste of time." I'm like, well, what if George Washington said it was a waste of time to go against England? We're never going to win. I think it's a waste of time if it should be investigated. What's a waste of time? What are you doing with your life that's so important that you can't do? Like, I'm not personally asking you to count the ballots.
Roll up those sleeves, get going there.
I just don't get it. It's very strange. But our country is built on things that many people would have considered a waste of time, but we did them.
Mm-hmm.
I write books about George Washington. He stopped his officers from committing. They were going to storm Congress and do a military coup at the end of the war. He stopped them by putting on a pair of glasses and showing them how much he had sacrificed. That's a short description of a poignant book. It's about the Newburgh conspiracy, but it's something that a lot of people don't know about. But this man never gave up. Everything was, quote unquote, a waste of time. Everything was such a long shot. This man never gave up. We would not be a country without George Washington. We need our George Washington now, and maybe those election officials are going to be like George Washington, like the ones that agreed to it, like. We need somebody that really values our democracy over what they look like, over what could be any appearances. The democracy comes first.
And I got to say that the biggest hero here is the American people. You have the potential to be the biggest heroes and be your own heroes, because I truly believe like no one can save you except yourselves. And no one, that the being able to continue to amplify this message to one thing that we learned is that, from Lulu at Smart Elections is that one of the challenges of election integrity work is that people really care about it once every 2 years and then they stop caring about it again. But we need to keep pushing this every minute of every day, for the next little while, and need to make it so that demand for election integrity, for common sense checks and balances to make sure that the results are as the reported results or the results that were cast are taken and done in future elections. And I do truly believe that even dictators care about public opinion. One thing that I'll say is there's a reason, why does Vladimir Putin hold elections if they're rigged?
I was thinking that when you said it, actually.
Yeah. So why do you think he does that? Why do you think he does that?
You're right. He cares about the appearance of it. He doesn't want to just be out and out a dictator.
Modern fascism uses elections for legitimacy management. You point to your elections. You point to what a good job you did. You swept everything. Everyone loved you. And you point to that, and it's about legitimacy. And I think that we sometimes don't think about things that are intangible as being important, but legitimacy is actually really important. Are you legitimate? If that can be the difference between people following an order or not, if they think that you're a legitimate leader. We don't think about morale very much. When I started to get involved in this, I felt like I looked over at my neighbor in the United States and just saw them face down in the mud as the tank was rolling towards them. It's like, oh my God, get up. A lack of morale leading to this despondency that is understandable but dangerous, because then if
that is exactly what we've been having, this despondency, and people are like, oh no, and they love talking about, they don't love talking about it, but they vent about all the horrible things that are happening. I'm like, well, we could actually be doing something. We could actually be advocating for a paper ballot recount.
Exactly.
That's a positive thing that we can do, which will raise our morale and only help.
Exactly.
Let's do this,
Raises morale, helps make sure that the future elected officials are legitimately elected by the will of the people. And those things important. Like morale, legitimacy, it sounds so wishy-washy, but I promise that those are actually there's a reason that morale is a military resource, right?
Of course. Yeah. Well, we can see it. We can see what's going on with morale. It's clear. I'm sure the only people making money around here are psychologists. I know we're running long, but I did want to mention about the paper. About you guys wrote a letter formally asking for a paper ballot audit of Pennsylvania's 2024 results. And then in May 25th, 2025, Jonathan Marks, the Deputy Secretary for Elections and Commissions, who handles the elections and commissions for the Department of State in Pennsylvania, denied ETA's request for a paper ballot audit. And he wrote, "Your allegations of vote manipulation in the 2024 general election in Pennsylvania are unfounded, and voters can trust that Pennsylvania's elections are free, fair, safe, and secure. I am committed to ensuring that is always the case." So he's saying this, but he is not in any way proving that that's the case, right? And then this was from a video that I watched Nathan share, so people can go and look at that video on the ETA site on YouTube, and you can see the letter, and there were certain things that really weren't true. Like it said the machines are supposed to be tested on a state level and by the individual counties. The counties the counties each submit a document certifying that they checked the machine. But in Cambria County, they had issues with the paper ballot scanning, and then they had a problem producing their certification that they had checked 125 scanners. And they finally did produce the document, but they found in emails from the previous county election director, which said that the central count machines were never tested, and they only tested certain machines.
Yep.
So this document may not even be correct. And so if this is true of one county, how many other counties is it true of? So it's crazy, right?
Exactly. Well, and I think as well, it's always frustrating when someone gets back to you with like canned messaging when what you've provided to them is evidence to the contrary. When you're saying like you did 2 audits and one of them isn't sufficient and the other one is of the state treasurer raise, and they get back saying we did 2 whole audits and here's what they are. It's like, I know that you did, and neither one of them would catch this.
They ordered also 2% of it is insane to think that that's adequate, and you're not. I mean, it's and the governor, he's a Democrat in that state, and maybe I was like, was he mad that he didn't get picked to be VP? I don't know, but I don't know what's going on. But I guess it is probably he doesn't want to look like the person that's going, that's questioning and that kind of thing. But the other thing, there's a lot important, but the fact that the only two companies are certified to test the machines, and they have come under suspicion. Okay. And Nathan said in the same video, we are starting to find concerns. These companies are very suspect.
Deeply.
So that's a huge, huge problem. I mean, wow.
It's shocking. It's actually shocking. My jaw was on the floor reading the article, a Substack article that Smart Elections wrote, digging into one of the there's only 2 companies that is able to test these machines in the entire country of the United States. And this company called Pro V&V, like their website disintegrated basically, like right after the election. You can't get in touch with them at all. They're deeply suspect in terms of what was put out there. And it turns out that a bunch of these minor updates were rolled out without much scrutiny before the election, that frankly, it doesn't matter how small the update is because anything can have malware. Even the smallest update that does very little can be infected with something by a bad actor. And theoretically, even one of those companies wouldn't need to know that. Like, this is the thing where people, I think, assume that if you're calling out like a brand of election machinery manufacturer or the company that does the certification testing, like you don't need to assume malice necessarily, just that's very few vectors for a lot of negative impact, right? Like if you compromise a vendor who makes machines that service 50% of the United States, like, gosh, that's a lot of bang for your buck, isn't it? If you compromise a small update that's going out to 80% of the machines in the country, that's a lot of bang for your buck. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be done with those groups knowingly. And so there are deep concerns where people say like, well, they're tested. Yeah, but who's doing the testing? What does that actually look like? And if you've ever what we know is that there were massive compromises between 2020 and 2024 where machinery was apprehended and taken by bad actors that were associated with the Republican campaign for president, leading up, like it was in that Stop the Steal period. And there were people who had access to those election management system software and hardware, the tabulator hardware and software, voting machine hardware and software, lists of sensitive pieces for 3.5 years. And if you know a hacker, and you ask them, hey, what could you do with machinery if you had all the software and the hardware for 3.5 years? Like, what could you do? A lot. They can do a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So so how are you guys handling that? Like, how do you find out more about this? How do you prove anything here about the companies?
Well, I'll be mindful of my words about exactly what I speak to here, but there are several avenues that you can take in terms of getting audits and recounts done. To hand audit paper ballots, one way is going through asking nicely and providing your rationale and making a request of the responsible officials. And we always want to start with that for several reasons. One of them is because it's better practice. It might be faster. And if you go through that the nice way, they might give you more than if you go, other methods.
What is it? The thing about you get more things with
flies with honey.
That's it. Yeah.
And the other reason why we always start with that is because if it is necessary, if those avenues get exhausted and instead we have to take another pathway, for example, going through court, because you can if you can make an argument to a judge, for example, for the rationale and the necessity for a hand audit, that's another pathway. And if you do that, then having the records that show you have gone through all of the normal ways of doing things is very important, because otherwise what you can do is you can show up guns blazing and they'll say, well, did you ask? No? Well, go back, get out, go ask and do that way then. So I'll say that we're exploring options in Pennsylvania right now for how best to proceed. And I'll also just add that we did put up a posting the other day looking for some people with paralegal expertise who have some experience and expertise in preparing legal documentation. So that's something that we're looking for as we build our team out.
Excellent. And there was one other thing that Jonathan Marks's letter asserted, that the machines are never connected to the internet. And Nathan pointed out that this doesn't need to occur in real time. The tampering can occur in updates. But he also revealed that some of the machines do appear to have modems that operate in real time.
Yep.
So this whole thing, it's like, so I'm so grateful to you guys for doing all this. I am supporting you, and I'm finally going to be able to boost my post. This I'm going to share wide out. We're going to do whatever we can for you. And can you tell people where should people that are impassioned about this, where should they put their efforts? What should they do?
Absolutely. You can find us at electiontruthalliance.org. We just recently updated our website. Same name as before, but with a new fresh coat of paint. We have on there a donate button that is predominantly focused on raising funds for legal action and audit seeking where necessary. So you can donate, you can sign up to volunteer if you've got a skill set that you think may be of value. We do flag a couple of skill sets now and then about like, hey, we're looking for people with GIS and mapping skills. We're looking for paralegals, whatever it may be. We also do have, shareable pieces of information, posters, stickers for spreading the word, sharing. Like ultimately, people are going to have more confidence and faith in if you are a trusted person to them, what you're sharing over and why you feel that you have concerns, then they may be willing to trust a random on the internet. And so, reaching out to people in your life, planting the seed, sharing what your concerns are, and especially in that looking forward manner where you want to make sure that future elections are secure and taken care of, and that you can have that great confidence. Like, let's work together to ensure confidence in future elections. I would say that that's one of the most important things that people can do, and it doesn't cost a cent.
Exactly. So much of this can be done and only can make you feel better for doing it.
Yes.
My morale is way up. I mean, my anger level. I may need to get more medicine for my blood pressure, but I feel at least I'm not like distraught. I'm not like laying on the floor in despair. So, so thank you very much. We always end our show with quotes. So I have, do you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I have one from William Faulkner. I'm a writer. So he said, never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion against injustice and lying and greed. If people all over the world would do this, it would change the earth. And then here's one for our young people. Kurt Cobain said,
Young people.
well, okay, we're all young. I guess it's for everybody. I rephrase that. It's for everybody. The duty of youth is to challenge corruption. And then my last quote is from Jacob Bronowski, a brilliant and renowned mathematician and philosopher who is best known for developing a humanistic approach to science. And he said, has there ever been a society which has died of dissent? Several have died of conformity in our lifetime. And go ahead.
Nice. I'm going to start with Robin Williams.
Okay.
Do it.
It's kind of sassy. People say satire is dead. It's not dead. It's alive and living in the White House. And the next one is John F. Kennedy. Let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer. Let us not seek to fix the blame for the past. Let us accept our own responsibility for the future.
Nice.
And is it Marcel Proust? Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay. The only real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes.
Nice. Let's all have some new eyes and look at this. Let's look at some ballots.
Let's look at some ballots.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Lilli. Thank you to our listeners, and let's go. Okay.
Thank you very much for having me. And to quickly quote a non-admirable person, but who has said some interesting things. It's not who votes, it's who counts the votes, from Joseph Stalin.
Oh,
wow.
Yes. What an interesting person to say that.
What an interesting
Love
person.
it.
Thank you very much for having me.
What an interesting person. Yeah.
That's a great quote to end on.
That is. He's an OG, huh? In many ways. All right. Thank you, listeners. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.